What's up, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday Tip. We have a great show lined up for you today. We have actually a different angle that we're going to be taking on today. So we're going to be taking a different angle on today as it relates to how the show is going to go. A little serious talk on today, all right? So I want everybody to come on in and have a seat, share this because it's a topic of communication. Actually, a topic that we all need to be talking about to help people along the way. So I'm going to bring in our COO and also the co-host for today, Brother Reg.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. This is Reggie Ayers. Again, as Mark stated, I am the COO for Next Showcase uh, Chicago, Next Showcase USA. And we are here again to have a conversation. We have Dr. Hoskins that will be joining us, and we'll be talking about managing grief on today. We do know that we have been hit hard the last year with um, multiple deaths, not just from COVID, but from COVID alone. We have had in the United States, we've had over 500,000 people that have died from COVID uh, within the last year. Grief is real, and it's something that we wanted to help with on today on how to manage grief.
Right.
Grief.
So a lot of times we just don't deal with a lot of subjects like mental health and grief and things like that. We've tried to shy away from those type of topics of communication and conversation rather. And we need to make sure that we continue to bring awareness to what we're doing and bring awareness to these different conversations, rather, and type of communication, so that we can be able to again continue to help people that are going through because either you experienced it personally and know someone has experienced it, or dealing with it at just a particular point in your life. So we want to talk about grief and how to deal with it, and we have a specialist, a person who actually, as you said, Reggie, has studied and knows all about coping with this and how to deal with it. So um, I'll let you bring in our guest. You're gonna read his bio first, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring in Dr. Hoskins, Dr. Arnold Hoskins, MTHD, MGT, an ordained and licensed pastor of a multicultural United Methodist Church and a clinically trained chaplain at the University of Chicago Medicine, specializing in palliative pastoral care and conducting grief seminars. He holds a master's degree in theological studies from McCormick Theological Seminary and a
Yeah,
doctorate
I hear
in
you.
management,
I don't hear
a
anything going on.
concentration and experience as a pastor,
No, this
preacher.
is live. It says live.
Yeah, we're live, guys.
I don't
Pastor.
understand why I don't hear anything.
I think he's having a
And neither
technical
do you,
difficulties
right?
there, so he can hear. We can hear him, but he can't hear us. We're definitely live, so um, hopefully be able to fix this audio in just a second. And
Reggie says, we can hear you. We are
yeah,
live. Oh, really? Okay.
yes, yes, Gilly and Drea. Okay, so yes, we can definitely hear you, Mike. And he went
Uh,
back out. So again, welcome to the show. On tonight, we're going to be dealing with that and talking about that. But just we got give you guys some updates on some things that are going on with Next Showcase USA. We'll definitely be launching a couple of new shows again. Well, not new shows. But this month we know is Women History Month, so we're going to be doing a slew to women history. We have a lot of great women that in our network that we're going to be talking about, and also we still continue to support Black businesses. So we're going to be honoring some Black businesses this month as well. We're going to be kind of doing a duo. So I think that both of those dates you guys to save is March 13th as well as March 27th. So make sure you guys save those dates and put it on your calendar. We'll be talking about Black entrepreneurs and history. I mean, and then also women history as well. So yeah, so you should save those dates and be a part of those great type of communication. Um, and then stay tuned March 15th is a great day. We're going to tell you guys a little bit about that a little later on, but just keep your eyes and ears open to March 15th. And also, we're going to be launching some great things as far as Next Showcase USA is concerned. But again, today's topic is about grief and how to cope with it. And once we be able to get our doctor back on, have a little technical difficulties, we can let him jump right into some ways and being able to deal with and cope with grief. As I said, we've all dealt with it at some point in our life of dealing with it. You know, the thing about it, the situation that we're in now is that it's not just about COVID. We know that it has taken over 500,000 lives in the United States of America alone by itself. But, you know, people are also still dying from other situations, suicide, depression, you know. There's still other elements that people are
Natural causes.
natural causes, you know, that are passing away from. So it's not, and we know that right now, COVID is like the number one leading cause of deaths in the United States of America, actually in the world. But, you know, so we want to talk about that and how do you deal with it? How do you cope with it? I know I have my own way of in which I have dealt with it and deal with it. And everybody know I love to have fun. So sometimes joking is my way of, laughter is my way of dealing with it. You know, my mom has been gone for some time now, and I still feel the effects of my parents being gone because, you know, I'm such a, especially a mama's boy. My brother was a daddy's dad. He's a daddy's son or whatever, however you want to call it. But I was definitely a mama's boy. But I think we got our doctor back online. Can you hear us now, doctor?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
So do me one favor before, because since we're talking about grief, I don't want you to kill me with your sound and your video, so don't touch nothing else, all right?
Yes.
Don't touch nothing else. We be talking about my death over your video and your sound. No.
That's right.
So, all right, let's jump right into Reg. I think were you finished reading his bio or?
No, let me read the bio over again, so we can give you a proper introduction. Dr. Arnold Haskins, MTH, DMGT, is an ordained and licensed pastor of a multicultural United Methodist Church and a clinically trained chaplain at the University of Chicago Medicine, specializing in palliative pastoral care and conducting grief seminars. He holds a master's degree in theological studies from McCormick Theological Seminary and a doctorate in management with a concentration in organizational change and development from Colorado Technical University. Dr. Hoskins has 20 years.
Say that word again, please.
As a pastor, preacher, Bible teacher, and men's ministry leader, developing and coordinating men's retreats and seminars. He resides in Westmont, Illinois. Doctor, we are grateful to have you with us. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. Really appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, and we tried to have a brief conversation before on the Mark Hubbard show, and we definitely thought that this was a topic that was worth sharing. So we did bring you back, and we have your own platform tonight. And
not his own platform. Don't give him too much because you give him his own platform. He be trying to, you know, he's still a preacher, so he want to take in a couple hours. So no, not his own platform. I'm gonna just stay in the doctor role tonight. All right.
We'll pace it. We'll pace it.
Yeah, we'll pace it. So I started out by saying that, you know, we've experienced. It appears that it is more deaths than we would normally experience, and the numbers would, I guess, align with what I'm saying. With us having over 500,000 in the United States, deaths that are just strictly related to COVID, and there are other causes of death that is happening every day. So we need a way to be able to manage the grief. I recently, my aunt just passed on Saturday.
I'm sorry.
She was 91 years old, and you know, she lived a full life. But we're never ready. We're never ready for that loved one to leave us. There's never a quote unquote good time for someone to pass. There's never a good age for someone to pass and for us to lose a loved one. So I know people grieve, and everyone grieves differently. Are there steps to grief? Are there certain steps of grief?
Well, absolutely. There have been numbers of studies with respect to stages of grief that people experience. But there's a doctor by the name of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she designed a grief model that pretty much articulates the stages that we go through in regards to grieving. And the first stage she articulates is denial. The first stage is denial. Oftentimes, you will hear people, particularly when there are sudden deaths, people are in denial. They'll say, I can't believe she's gone. I just talked to her yesterday. And so that's the initial stage that all of us more than likely experience. And then the stage after that, she says, is anger. Sometimes you will find people, they will get very angry about the death of a person. For example, I had a patient that died about a year ago, and it was a young man, and his brother they were in their 20s. His brother was a little older. So the 20-year-old had died, and his brother, 22, became very angry, began to beat on the walls at the hospital. Of course, the nurses got a little upset, paranoid, thinking perhaps he was going to hit her. They called the security, and I told him, give me a few minutes, and I calmed him down. So his second stage, he was angry because his brother had died. And then the third stage that we typically hear about is bargaining. Someone may say, well, I wish I could have done more, or had I spent more time with him, then maybe they wouldn't have committed suicide. So we began to bargain with ourselves, believing that had we done something different, the person would not have died. So you have your denial, then you have your anger, then you have that bargaining. And then the fourth stage is usually one goes into depression. Now it's sinking in. You're very sad about it. You're depressed about it. And then finally, after we go through those stages, then there's the acceptance. We begin to accept the stage. Now you will find all of us may not experience each one of these stages, but more often than not, we will experience many of these stages. And these stages don't necessarily have to go in this chronological order either. And also, you can revisit a stage, if you will. So those are the stages that you will hear, you will read about, scholars talk about, and that you will see people experience if you're mindful of the shifts of moods that people go through.
Now, what if, or what what about if someone stays in one stage? They haven't. They just remain angry. There are some people that, like you said, they begin to get angry. They get angry with God. They say that God took my loved one. God did this. God did that. What if someone is stuck in that stage of anger?
That's a very good question. When my brother died at the age of 24, we were a year apart, and I was 25. I became very angry. And in fact, I was angry with God. I was so angry with God, I refused to go to church. I refused to pray anymore. And I was basically done with God. I was angry for an entire year because I refused to mention his name. I refused to attend church, and we were churchgoers. So you can be stuck in a stage. You can, and it depends on, of course, we're all individuals, so you're going to experience things individually. And yes, I was stuck in a stage for a year. Now, how do you manage that anger? Now, if my anger became such that I was violent, well, then, of course, that would require some professional help. But my anger was strictly directed toward God, and I just changed my habits, changed my way of living because I didn't go to worship anymore. But I was able to get past that stage by the help of a relative. A relative invited me back to church finally after repeated offers of coming back to church, and I went back to church, and then I renewed my relationship with God. And the rest is history. Now I'm ordained minister and preaching, and I haven't left his side since. So those are just some of the steps, some of the experiences, and we can get stuck in the stage, and you can get unstuck, if you will.
Okay. Okay. And what I mean, is there a such thing as grieving too long? Not just the stages, but being in grief too long, where someone
Yeah.
will say, "Well, you've been mourning the loss of your loved one way too long. You need to." Some people are very insensitive. Some people will even say, "You need to get over it." Well,
Well,
how do you see that?
that's well. You know, one thing. I would never tell a person you need to get over it. And I have heard people say that you've been grieving too long. You need to get over it. You need to get past this. That's really not good advice. We have to learn how to encourage people by using loving, kind words. And we have to make suggestions. I know Mark was talking earlier in your management meeting about using certain words. And he's absolutely right. So we have to use words that are much more motivating, words that are much more encouraging, and not negative narrative. That's a negative narrative. And you will rarely find people responding to a negative narrative. So we have to be able to encourage people in a positive way. Perhaps, we need to look at getting you some help. Those kinds of conversations. So that's what I would recommend versus pushing your agenda on them, but yet encouraging them in a way that's much more palatable.
Well, I'm glad you were. I didn't know you were listening, but I'm glad you were listening to the conversation earlier. Clara, you got to be more careful. Got to make sure our audience is backstage for real. They can't hear now. We talk about us, but we were talking
But,
about.
since I have a strong management background, I can
Yeah.
appreciate what you were saying. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were talking about the fact of I don't like the word, and I'm still going to stick with grief because I really want to get back to the point. Is it is it a point that you really can grieve too long? Is it really a point where it is really such a thing? I know we have to be careful of the words of being insensitive or saying get over it, you need to move past it. But is it from a psychological point and from a health standpoint, is it a place where a person really can literally, because I've heard of people grieving so far until as grief has caused their actual death. So they couldn't get past the fact of just losing a loved one. So they grieved themselves into an actual state of to where they passed away just from grief because
Yes.
of what was.
Let me put it this way. We all are going to. I think someone mentioned. Your partner mentioned earlier that his grandmother died of 91 years old. Now, just because she's old doesn't mean he won't grieve. And even if she had died many years ago, doesn't mean he has ceased grieving.
Mhm.
The key is, how are you grieving? Are you coping with the grief, or is your grief detrimental to your health, to your point? If one is grieving and that is detrimental to their health, then at that point they need professional help. But if you are grieving in a, let's use the word normal way, because let's face it, we're all grieving. You're still grieving the loss of a loved one, but you're managing that grief. You're coping with that grief in a way that is not bad for your health or damaging to your health. So I believe that we are always grieving. It's just how we are grieving. And then the steps that I talk about in terms of managing your grief, we all have to learn how to manage our grief. When you, at the anniversary of a loved one, I believe people are grieving at that point too. In fact, when you remember a person, you're grieving, but you're coping with the grief in a way that is not detrimental to your health, but you're grieving in a healthy way.
Because I know my mom's birthday, holidays. Same with my dad. Those holidays and those actual birthdays are times when I tend. And my parents been gone for 30 some years now, and I tend to always go into that level of what I call depression because of the fact that I miss them so much. And like I said, I'm a mama's boy. Not that I miss my mom, my dad no less, but literally, I miss my mom daily,
Yeah.
for real, But it's just those times, especially the birthdays and the holidays, it gets so real, and I'm not really good at like going to mother's funerals and stuff like that. I just don't like funerals, period. But
Yeah.
you have to attend them. But so it gets to the point where but I've learned how to cope. And it took me time to get there. So I'm very honest with my friends, very transparent. I wasn't over my mama's death, my parents' death passing in 5 years, 10 years. Literally, it took me some time to get to the point where I was able to, look at a picture. Like it took me a very long time before I could even watch a video of my mom. Because a video of my mom would just take me to the left. And I'm talking about recently, it took me to that point to get there. Yeah. And I started realizing, and you can speak more to this, that was becoming more of a internal thing that was really not healthy for me. Mm-hmm. Not that I wasn't supposed to agree with, but unhealthy because it was stressing me out so bad to the point that I was just like, going to the point because I could not show me a video of my mom doing sin, and I couldn't see nothing of her just in her breath being alive. That would just take me completely to the left. So it's always that's why I want to ask the question about, can a person grieve too long? And if a person is grieving too long, how do you manage that? How do you get them out of that situation so they can get to the point where it is a point of stability where they do deal with it in a healthy fashion? Because if you really love someone, whether they're close to you, a family member, me personally, and the doctor, you can speak on this. I don't think you ever get over them. Right. It's just important that there will always be a part of you in your heart. So certain things about them, certain things that happen in life, certain things that happen in the moment, certain things that always trigger something about you that make you remember, man, I miss them. But I know that, as we say, we know they're in a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things, one of my steps, at least even I have 7 steps to managing your grief, but let's jump to the last stage, and that is the 7th stage, which I call living their legacy. Mm-hmm. Living their legacy, you're really celebrating the person. Now, you spoke about your mom and your mama's boy. Well, I'm a daddy's boy. Today is my father's birthday, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. And I celebrate. See, we learn to celebrate them. I celebrate my father and my brother's death all the time. How do I do that? By telling their stories. I have a story about my brother. He and I were 1 year apart, and we were the same age for one day. My birthday is June the 13th. His is June the 14th.
Oh, wow.
And we would do this silly thing every year. He would call me little brother. And I would say, listen, I'm only a year younger. He says, yeah, but you're still my little brother. But on my birthday, Mark, we would be the same age for one day. And I would say, today you can't call me little brother. And he would laugh and he would say, happy birthday, brother. But the next day, he would say happy birthday to me, little brother. I tell that silly story all the time to patients because I am sharing with them, number 1, how to celebrate, and number 2, how to cope, and number 3, how to impart that into others. So this silly little story that I tell, we all have them if we think about it and we begin to share, and that's how you are living their legacy. Mm-hmm. You're coping with your grief and you're celebrating them. I do the same thing with my dad. One of the things that he would say all the time, he first said it when I was 13. He didn't understand what he was talking about. He would say, son, take the benefit of my experience. Now at 13, I have no idea what he's talking about. But as I grew, I understood he's telling me Don't make the mistakes I made. Learn from me. And so that's some lesson that I share with others that my dad says, son, take the benefit of my experience. So what am I doing? I'm celebrating him. I'm remembering him in a positive way, and I am living his legacy. And the same thing with your mom. I'm sure you have a plethora of stories that you can tell about your mom, as we all have. And that's what we
Yeah.
need to do, is to celebrate them, live their legacy, and at the same time we're learning how to cope with it in a way that's healthy, in a way that's fun, in a way that's loving, in a way that's memorable.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that was the seventh step. What are some of the other steps that you can share
Some of
to?
the some of the other steps. One of the things that we must recognize, and that is that we have, all of us have internal strengths. We have this. We are biologically built with an inner strength, whether that's some kind of resolve, whether that's being able to resist, whether that is determination. But when we experience grief, that biological internal strength becomes compromised by our grief. And so we become weak, we become depressed. And so, what do we need to do? The first step I call is turn it up or tune into it. So we tune into our strength. How do I tune into my strength? I pray. Some meditate. Some may do yoga. Some may listen to music. So what you're doing is tuning back into your strength. You're tapping back into your internal strength. So those are some of the things that we have to learn how to do. The second thing is to your, for example, your diet. You may stop eating. You may not have an appetite, and so you have to turn it up, and that is to turn up your energy level. So oftentimes we lose our appetite. And so one of the things that I suggest is, instead of not eating, instead of not going out to the restaurant, you don't feel like doing any of that, I would recommend people uh, to create smoothies, real nice fruitful smoothies. And one thing about smoothies, they're healthy, they're fun to make, they're pretty and they're colorful when you get all these different fruits together, and they're easy to make. That way, you are still getting your nutrients and you're engaging in a meal that can be fun.
Well,
Uh,
it's easy to make depending upon who the person is.
you just
I have a little challenge in making smoothies. I have a little challenge in the kitchen, period. But keep
Market challenge period. So
but go
get,
ahead on, doctor. Go ahead
get,
on.
your, get your great blender, get you some bananas, throw in there some mango, a little papaya juice. Be surprised, Mark. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, you would too. But go ahead on. Keep up with the tips, though, doc. I hear you.
The third step, what I call is to work it out, walk it out. So some guys like to work out. Some people like to have a friend. She likes to walk. And so, what are you doing? You're burning your energy. You are being active. You are keeping yourself healthy, because what happens a lot is people get so depressed. They don't move. They don't go anywhere. They don't do anything. They get lethargic. But we have to remember that we have to stay physically engaged. And one of the things about walking is that it is so therapeutic. Like taking a walk and walking with a friend is even better. Even when you work out, usually you have a workout partner or trainer. So that's the other thing I would encourage. The other thing I would encourage is talking to a friend, talking to someone. Now, a lot of times when we're depressed, when we're grieving, we don't want to talk to anyone. But we have to participate in our own recovery. And we have to try to be intentional with that. And even if I don't want to talk to you, Mark, then Mark, you know that I'm depressed. So you should call me. Um, And don't just call me one day. You need to call me a couple of times. You need to call me week after week to keep me engaged, to make sure I'm all right, to check in with me, because everyone's level of depression is different. So we have to stay engaged with that person.
And
And
if I
I think that's. I'm sorry, Mark. I think that's. Go ahead, Mark.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think that's important because we see oftentimes where when the person, the family member of someone that has passed, we reach out to them immediately. We uh, contact them leading up to the services, the funeral. We're in contact with them, constant contact, checking on them. But after the services, is
Mhm.
things just fall off.
Yeah,
You don't hear from that person. No one's calling anymore. No one's checking up on you. That's when the person really needs the call. That's when the
that's right.
person really needs the encouraging word, the laugh. You know.
And I have made it my business now to do just that. I would check on you during the process, but I've made it my business or my I don't know the word I'm looking for, to always check on people afterwards,
Hmm.
because I know that's a lot. That's when people really do need you, because we fall off. People fall
Yeah.
off. I mean, they to up until the point and to the day of the funeral, repast, they come eat all your food up, eat all your chicken and stuff like that. So eat all that up, and then come the next day, they don't hear from you no more. So I made it my business. So if I know someone has lost a loved one, I write down, hey, Mark, not just now, but afterwards, a couple
Yeah.
weeks later, check on them, see how they're doing.
Yeah.
And what I was getting ready to interject as well, though, because we know we're in this day of, I call no talk communication, uh,
Mhm.
where we feel that a text message, and I get it. I understand text messages and I understand people, everybody, for some odd reason, when we get into this world of texting and beepers and stuff like that, everybody, now we can't talk on the phone. Nobody knows how to talk. Everybody hates talking on the phone now. I
Right.
don't call me, text me. Before I was doing that, was using cords to pay phones and everything else. You want to communicate with
Exactly.
somebody, you did what? You got on the phone and you
Mhm.
talk. Saying, I have a friend that she sent us a text, but she said, "Listen, people need to understand we still do business by phone and email. Don't text. You're gonna miss out by text messages. We still do
Right.
business, and this is some person that's high up in ranks, and she's like, we still do business by phone.
Yeah.
So my point behind it is that we at this point where we just want to text people, but people need to hear
Right.
people's voice.
Mhm. Yeah.
Call people and say, hey, how you doing? If they don't want to talk for very long, at least that you never know what just the hearing of your voice can do to uplift them. And so I always kind of, I just me, not just from an old school point of view, but I just think it's also therapeutic and helpful if you pick up the phone
Yeah.
and call. Just not text, but pick up the phone and call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to participate in our own grief recovery. And another step is winding down.
Hmm.
Sometimes when you're so depressed and uptight, you can't even sleep. And so then there's a step that I call winding down. So you want to prepare for bed. You want to prepare, you want to wind down. So take you a nice hot bath, make some chamomile tea, put on some music, set the mood to go to bed to get some rest. And we don't always have to take pills to go to sleep. But if we wind down and prepare ourselves so that we can psychologically wind down, physically wind down, and mentally wind down, and those are the things that I would suggest that we do in order to get a sweet sleep, and that is to prepare. And so we have to actively be engaged in wanting to recover. And that's part of some conversation that we can have with one another. Mark, when you call your friend, you can ask them, well, how are you sleeping at night?
Mhm.
And if he or she says, I just can't sleep, well, you need to learn how do you wind down.
Hmm.
This is what I would suggest to wind down. And then you tell them, set the mood for winding down, for going to sleep. Make some chamomile tea, which is good tea because what it does, it triggers the sensors in your mind. It relaxes all of the anxiety that your body goes through, and it really calms you down. A nice bath, nice music, and before you know it, you're fast asleep.
Well, that's
I had to think about I keep having to remind myself this is a serious show because there's just certain things you have to be clear about.
Yeah.
But I keep reminding myself this is a serious show with a doctor. We have to bring him back when he's not so serious. We bring him back in the when it's not so serious show, so we can talk about some other things. But
the good thing about it, I mean, let's face it, your show is so diverse. I mean, you cover so many different areas, and the fact of the matter is, our community needs all of this.
yes,
The fun things, we need the serious things,
mm-hmm.
and I've seen your show a lot, and you've got a lot of different guests to cover a lot of genres. And let's face it, you are touching our community on every level. So this is the serious moment. When I wrote this article, I wrote it in January. There were 200,000 deaths in the United States. We're in March now. That's 500,000. That's been 100,000 each month.
Yes.
So that's five. So that's a serious matter. Now we're just talking about deaths, but how many persons have been impacted? How many friends of the 500,000? How many relatives of the 500,000? How many co-workers of the 500,000? So we're talking over millions of people that have been impacted. Our whole world has been impacted. Yes, we need to learn how to talk about it and how to cope with it so we can manage our grief.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Reggie, we're not going to hold them too much longer. And so, because we try to give people tips, and so therefore they can actually go back and support you in your article and your work that you're doing to get more information on how to continue this conversation. Not that I'm not cutting anything off. I'm just saying that we normally give tips, but I did want to just kind of touch on before we get back into the grief aspect. We were talked about earlier, so I know I want people to leave people in the dark. We was talking about earlier that you said you agree with me on. So I was speaking with a staff member. This is kind of off topic. Rachel came on it. We get back on it, but you said you was management. That's one word that I really have a problem with when we talking to co-workers or talking to individuals and volunteers. I don't like the word mandatory when you asking someone to do something. And we was talking about that earlier, just in the aspect of, because with me, when you say mandatory, that means there's something. I always said a paycheck got to be coming along with that when you go make me do something.
Right.
But I always say I strongly suggest or that you would be a part of this, or strongly suggest that you do this, because if you can't, then it may affect you in this area. But when you say mandatory, that may actually make us somebody do something. And I don't think that, I just don't like the word for my organization or what I do to mandate my staff to do anything when they're volunteering. That's just, I just wanted to clear that up. We were talking about that earlier.
Sure.
So yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If they're volunteering, of course, you want to strongly encourage them. But if they're paid staff, you can tell them it's required.
Required. Yes.
You don't even have to use the word mandatory that you are not too crazy about. So you can use the word required. But you're right. If they're volunteering, you strongly encourage them. You can use those words, and I agree with that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Back on track now, Reggie. We just had to clean that up right there. We was talking about earlier.
I'm not sure what that had to do with this conversation, but okay. All right.
See, Reggie's the on track person. He's always gonna get us back on track. But he brought it up, Reg. He was listening to our conversation that I was having with Lady D earlier. So since Doctor brought it up, I just wanted to clarify what we were talking about. Saying all of that,
what he said coincided with what we were talking about tonight.
No, but he was talking about what we talked about earlier, though. So you missed that conversation. You were late to the sport.
No, I heard what he said, but
you were late to the other conversation.
Okay, all right. All right, Doctor, we thank you for joining us and sharing. Yes. And I just wanted to share one of the things that kind of made my day today. Again, I stated my aunt passed on Saturday. I've been dealing with that. We haven't had the services yet. So there's that period between the death and the service where um, you can be okay because you haven't had
Right.
um, the final with uh, going to the cemetery and things of that nature. So there's a period. What would you say if there's someone that is saying, "Well, I haven't cried yet. I feel like I'm not grieving because I haven't been able to cry. I haven't been able to shed any tears." What would you say to someone that's in that? Is that a stage or uh, where does that fall?
Well, if someone is concerned about that, their emotional trigger has not, they have not pulled the emotional trigger yet. And you made a very good point between the death and the actual services. There's a limbo period there, and they may not have cried in between that period. The emotional trigger hasn't been pulled yet. And each of us have a different emotional trigger, a different time for that. So that trigger has not, the time hasn't come for the trigger to be pulled yet for those tears to flow. So I wouldn't worry about that because their day will come. It will come. There's nothing to be worried about because everybody has an emotional trigger and it's pulled in different ways. It's activated in different ways, at different times.
I would also go so far to say, this may sound a little silly or crazy, but I think sometimes that time period between the passing and the funeral, people kind of, I don't say look forward to, but it just gives them a certain sense of not dealing
Closure.
with reality, huh?
Closure.
Close, yeah, and then so once it gets to that point when they see the actual ending of it, it kind of that's when it kind of hits. So people kind of say, well, you know what? Until now, for me, like it wasn't reality until I actually had to go and view the body. I was like, man, this
Yeah.
is really reality. So sometime in that in between that
Yeah.
period of losing someone and actually the funeral services, or the case would be, people are in that point where I'm just talking for me personally, how I dealt with it was like, okay, it's they just on vacation. Sometimes sometimes in your mind, you kind of like try to make your mind think something like that. But then when you actually get to that point where you have to see it, I think that's when reality kind of kicks in. And I think at that point, people really do have no other choice but to, in some type of way, deal with reality of the grief of that person literally won't see them again anymore in a physical sense.
Well, that goes back to the first stage of denial. You said you're on vacation. Well, you can call it that, but one is just in denial that you really haven't fully accepted. Your mind has not fully accepted the fact that this person has died.
Yeah.
And until you go to that services, then you have accepted the fact that this is reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the article you mentioned is available online. It's on ChicagoDefender.com, and I would advise anyone that's dealing with grief and needs to um, revisit or live with this a little bit longer. Check out the article that Dr. Hoskins has written. It's on ChicagoDefender.com, and it's titled "Op-Ed Managing Your Grief."
You can
Uh,
also, Reg, you can also go to my website, which is www.drarnoldhoskins.com. So and I have a website and I have the article on my website as well.
awesome. So we want people to continue to because again, this is not something that you get over in a day, a year, 10 years, 20 years. Um, it's a process, and you stated earlier, which was very uh, enlightening. We learn how to cope with it.
Learn to manage it.
Yeah, learn how to manage it. So we just want everyone to learn how to manage grief. Um, it's it's definitely okay to cry,
Sure.
shed those tears. Um, and if it gets to a point where it seems like you're not moving past it, then you suggest getting some help.
Some professional help, sure. And that's okay. They have group sessions. Doesn't have to be a one-on-one session. They have group grieving sessions. You can have a one-on-one session with a grief counselor, but there's help available. There's definitely help available. You can go on my website and reach out to me. I can share some resources with you or conversations with you. So there's plenty.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So again, we thank you for joining us. One of the other steps that you mentioned is take on a new task, and it's something that I started before. Maybe July, I started doing a family tree, just trying to research and see some of my connections. And there's a large age gap in my family. My mom and my dad, they were 15 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got married, um, my mom was 18, my dad was 32. My mom did not start having children until she was 30.
Wow.
So all of my cousins are old enough to be my parents. So they're in the same age group with my parents. And um, I have a sister that was from my father's first marriage,
Mm-hmm.
that she was born 5 years after my mom was. So she would have been 80 this year, and I connected today actually with my nephew that I had never met before. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Connected with him today. That kind of made my day. And then that's taking on a new task. I'm doing something different.
Yeah.
Found a loved one, and found out that I have some other relatives that are still in the town that my dad grew up in. So if we start doing some other tasks,
That's right.
there's some things that can brighten your day
Mm-hmm.
while you're still in the grieving process.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yes. Yeah, that's a good step that I've recommended on my list of things as to how to manage grief. There's a lady that had been taking care of her husband for 20 years, had been sick. And she told me, she says, now I don't know what to do with myself
Mhm.
because I was making him breakfast, bathing him, doing everything, taking him to the doctor for the past 20 years. What do I do with myself? So I began to have conversation with her about things that she had not gotten around to doing, things that she liked. Now she's painting because she's always wanted to get back into painting. So she bought an easel, paint kit, and now she's painting portraits. So yes, we have to continue to live, even though our loved ones have gone away. But now she is. She's painting. She painted a portrait of herself with her husband. Just wonderful. But I'm really happy to hear that you're embracing in a new task with a family tree. That's a wonderful thing.
Yep. So
Right.
thank you again, Doctor, for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Don't want to, again, as Mark stated, take up all of the time, and we do want people to support you and go to your website. Share your website with us again.
Yes, that's www.drarnoldhoskins.com.
And again, it's okay not to be okay. If you need additional help, you need
Sure.
additional grief counseling, they can reach out to you right on your website.
They sure can. Yes, yes.
All right, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
We appreciate you as well.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the show on tonight. Again, this is Tuesday tip. We went a little longer than we normally go, but hey, we don't put no timeline on good information. Okay, so again, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We'll be back next month with Tuesday tip again. Another great conversation.
Yeah. So Daryl, thanks for joining. Rebecca, Amber, all of the guys that left comments, and everyone else that's watching and that will watch later. Thank you guys for joining us. We do have fun conversations, and these are conversations that are necessary as we deal with financial literacy. We deal with all of these other topics. Grief is very important, and it's something that, again, we all deal with. So we want you guys all to be well, and yeah, be well.
And you know me. You know me, I'm gonna find a little humor there some type of way. I'm gonna go off topic. I'm gonna do something always because that's me. That's just who I am, huh? And Reggie's gonna be Reggie. Always just shake his head when I do it. But enjoy live a little bit. All right. So again, guys, thank you guys for joining us. You have a good night. We'll see you guys real soon. All right. I am Mark Cover CEO, and that is
Reggie Ayers, COO, Next Showcase USA.
good night, everyone.